All of you to our Small Talks After Hours event featuring Lenore Skenazy. And later, after Lenore speaks to us, we have a panel of early childhood experts to discuss the benefits of play, unstructured time, and independence. Before I introduce Lenore, though, I want to make sure to thank all of the folks and the wonderful sponsors that we have for this event. Many of our partners, board members, and friends that are here with us tonight also are helping sponsor the event. I particularly want to call out our three top sponsors, the Northside Achievement Zone. They are one of our fantastic partners in the work that we do, and they also are supporting us in this event. The Red Leaf Family Foundation, Rhoda is here this evening, and she's been with us for so long, and they are longtime supporters of our event. And I also want to acknowledge Diane Redleaf, Rhoda's daughter, also for introducing us to Lenore and helping make this happen tonight, getting her here for us. So thank you so much, everybody. My pleasure to welcome and introduce to you the woman that wrote a column for the New York Sun titled "Why I Let My 9-Year-Old Ride the Subway Alone," which landed her on every talk show from Okay, I got it. Okay. She has a book. You signed it for most people here, is that right? Get the book signed when she leaves. I'm not even going to tell you the name of the book. And the only thing I guess I'm going to say is that we're really happy. I know as a mother that I am so pleased that someone else has that title, World's Worst Mom.
Tell me if it's on. Is it on? Yes, there we go. Okay, great. So thank you, Barbara. Thank you for ditching your notes. I forgot to talk to you about that. Thank you, every Red Leaf in this room and every Red Leaf in Minnesota. They're all related to you anyway, right? And thank you, Think Small. And thank you for the woman who came and saw me in Virginia and is here again. There you are. There she is. My fan. At last. 11 years in. So, Barbara told you my nickname is actually America's Worst Mom. And if you Google that phrase, which don't do now, because you'll get into Google and I'll never hear from you again, but if you Google it, you'll find me there for 77 Google pages, followed by America's Worst Mother's Day Gift. Well, how timely is that, guys? We don't want an iron. And lingerie is for Father's Day. So, worst mom or not, I'm a mom. That means I spend a lot of time talking to other moms. And a few years back, and by a few years back, I mean a couple centuries ago, I was talking to my upstairs neighbor in Manhattan. I lived on 18, she lived on 23, it's in New York City. Her name was Melissa, and she was looking at me with horror and saying, "Lenore, can you believe she did that?" And I'm like, "No, Melissa, I don't even know what you're talking about." Well, Melissa had been at Costco with her two little kids who were girls ages 5 and 2 at the time. She was waiting in line to check out, and the lady behind her tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Excuse me, would you mind watching my little boy for a minute or two? I forgot enough tuna for Armageddon." That's why you shop at Costco. And so Melissa said, "Oh, of course I'll do that." And so the lady went off, and then Melissa turned to me, "That's what she did." And I'm like, "Forgot the tuna? You know, it's hard to shop at Costco." No. And she said, "No, Lenore, I could have taken her baby, and she would never have seen him again." And I'm like, "That's why you're mad at this other mom?" "Yes, and all the other moms in our building, everyone thought that she was so irresponsible leaving this child in public with another mom." I was like, I don't know, Melissa. Let me just think about this for a second. First of all, for you to take that lady's baby would require you to be a kidnapper. You know, one of the few with 2 small children of your own already. and going about it the slow yield method of waiting for someone to hand you a baby in public. But let's say, okay, you know, it happened at last. This was so easy. And so all you have to do is grab that baby, you know, get out, drag your own kids, leaving your place in line at Costco. That's crazy, right? And then you get to the parking lot, you're flustered, it's your first felony, you can't remember where you parked, and then find out, okay, beep, 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 there's your car. You put the 2 kids in, and then you don't have a car seat for the baby. You didn't know today was the day. So then you have to put a laundry basket, and you didn't ask how old he was. That would have been a little obvious, so you don't know, is he facing backwards still, or is he facing forward, so you put him like sideways, and then you have to share the Cheerios, and there's only 2 sipping cups, and you have to be sitting down with the girls, and now you have to watch Bob the Builder or God forbid Caillou for the rest of your life, and then you drive across state lines, and this is a big laugh getter in New York, into New Jersey, where you gotta live like in a tree for the rest of your life with these 2 kids, and now this one whose name you don't know, it doesn't matter, you can't use his real name anyway, because they're all living under alias, and you can't have a credit card, you can't have your phone, your husband, forget it, maybe that was the whole point, and so, this is what Melissa thought made sense. So my whole point is, who's crazy, right? Melissa, yes, or me, no. So, simple as that. Good night. So I was a newspaper columnist at the time at the New York Daily News. Come to New York, never buy the Daily News. Long story. We get 2 subscriptions to New York Post. Anyways, writing for the Daily News at that time, and I wrote a column about this because I thought, wow, this is such a strange moment in American culture where we think the kid is safe, gone. You know, in the eyes of another mom, but gone. So I wrote this, and I thought it would set the world on fire. It didn't. Lost the job. And it wasn't immediate, but soon enough, lost that job. A couple years later, I'm working on a much smaller paper called the New York Sun. And at that time, our younger son started asking me, thank you, Barbara, for not stepping on this whole story, started asking me and my husband if we would take him someplace he'd never been before in the city, New York City, and let him find his own way home by subway. And this was something my husband, America's worst dad, you never hear that. My husband and I had to think about this because our older son, who you won't hear about much because he didn't ask to do this, he calls himself now the control group. So, our older son got asked. So we decided, yeah, we think it's okay for our younger son to take the subway by himself. He speaks the language, we're always on the subways, it seemed fine. So one sunny Sunday, I took him to Bloomingdale's, where don't shop, and it's all thrift. And why do they have to know that? Anyways, took him to Bloomingdale's, and I left him in the handbag department. And after telling him it was the day, I was like, Mom? No, it was like, today's the day, I'm gonna leave here, I'm gonna go somewhere. And the handbag department is right over where the subway entrance is. There's a subway entrance literally under Bloomingdale. So I went one way, and he went the other way. He went down into the subway, and then he talked to one of those things you're never supposed to talk to. It's a male. A male of the species. He said, is this the downtown side? And the man said, perfect for Melissa. No. The man said, no, you're on the wrong side. Also, let me just ask you a question. Is it weird every time I walk here? Like, because it's weird for me because it's so sunny, but no, okay. So the guy said you're on the wrong side. So as he went up and over, took the subway down to 34th Street. Miracle, there he is. He comes out, has to take another bus across. And when he comes into the apartment, he's levitating. Because he has finally been allowed to do something that he knew he was ready to do, and we believed in him. To me, this didn't strike me as such a big deal, and I didn't write about it for like a month and a half. But then I was staring at a screen one day at this much smaller paper and not having anything to write about. So I said to my editor, should I write about Izzy taking the subway? You know, I was talking to some of the other 4th grade moms, and they were going to wait till their kids were a little later, little older, 39, 40. And so my editor said, yeah, write that. It sounds like a nice local story. I've been to Australia twice with this. Anyways, so I write why I let my 9-year-old ride the subway alone, and 2 days later I'm on the Today Show, MSNBC, Fox News, and for contrast, NPR. And it's fun, and sometimes Izzy is with me, and sometimes he's not, and you know, how is it fun, is it hard, is it difficult, or whatever. But at some point in all of these conversations, and frankly for years afterwards, the interviewer would drop her voice because she was going to be so sincere, which means, of course, she wasn't sincere. But anyways, they would drop their voice and ask this question as if reluctantly, but totally not. And the question is this, but Lenore, how would you have felt if he never came home? And I was like, I don't know what to say. I was I don't know. I got that spare son at home. Smarter. What should I do? I never had I had stupid answers. And I couldn't figure out why. Until, maybe I'm stupid, because it took me 4 years to figure out why I was having such a difficult time answering that. And it finally dawned on me, because it wasn't a question. This was not a question. How would I feel? Oh, bummed. Oh my God, all that food I fed him for what? Why did I feed him, for God's sake, so many times with Captain Cat? But then, so if it's not a question, and they know how I would feel, why were they asking? Because it was an accusation. And the accusation is, why weren't you thinking about how you would never forgive yourself if something terrible happened, and go to that very dark place to the point where you become paralyzed with not letting them do anything, which is the way to be a good parent today. You're never supposed to let them out of your sight, because if something bad happened, we certainly in the media will not forgive you. You will never forgive yourself. Think first. I call it worst first thinking. Go to the worst case scenario first, proceed as if it's likely to happen. That has become like a knee-jerk, weird trope of our culture. We think that way, and we think it's being smart, we think it's being caring and wise, and it's really being paralyzed with fear. So I wondered, no, I didn't wonder, this is what I did. I went home, and I started my blog, and I called it Free Range Kids. And I explained, because in a blog, you're not being interviewed by these jerks, that I love safety, okay? I love helmets and car seats and seat belts and mouth guards. Mouth guards is the present we gave at my son's 10th birthday. Like, wow, this is a really fun, wild mom. We're all getting mouth guards. And then I boiled them and I put them in their mouths after blowing them. It shouldn't be too hot. That's crazy, daredevil, evil Knievel the North. We did everything that's safety, extra layers. So the point is, I started hearing from people around the country telling me things that I didn't know, because I was in my Manhattan bubble. Like, I didn't realize that parents drive their kids to the bus stop. That's how ignorant I was. And then I started hearing about getting home from school, which was astounding to me, because I live in New York, where we walk or we take the subway. And so in suburbs around America, at around 2:30, the cars start lining up, right? They're in front of the school, and they're on the cul-de-sac. They're basically back home. There's this giant snaking line of cars, and people just waiting for the bell to ring. And then, ding, 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 yay, yay, it's 3 o'clock. And so all the kids are gathered together in the auditorium or the gym, and the bus kids, the kids nobody really cares about, they're over here. And then the beloved children whose parents are picking them up are here. And outside, there's someone, and I always think it's the gym teacher, with a walkie-talkie, and the first car rolls up, and there's a dashboard name on it, and it's like, Oliver, your mother is here. And somebody in the gym is going, oh, Oliver P or Oliver K? Oliver K. Oliver K, your mother is here. And they pick him up, and they bring him out, and they shove him in, and they slam the door like he's some third world dictator, and then off he goes. And I was like, Ava, your mother's here, and Dina, your mother's here, and come up with another cute name. Sydney, your mother's here, and they're coming, and they're going, and it's like there's bombs exploding, and snipers sniping, and helicopters, get him out, oh my God, get him in, you go up. Yes, they got out, they're safe, high fives all around, every day. It's like the fall of Saigon. In neighborhoods that parents move to, why? Because it's safe, right? All right, scary moment for you. It's coffee. Now I can talk fast. Okay. So that was just, getting to and from school, which you can see even in the words we used, how things have changed. Because when I was going to school, it was, what was it when I was going to school? It was arrival in the morning, and the afternoon was dismissal. And now it's drop off and pick up. Because, isn't that interesting? Because the kids have become FedEx packages. Oh, I gotta drop off, and then I gotta pick it up at 3, and then I gotta get it to the soccer field, and then I gotta get back over to the house, and I gotta go to Kumon. So something strange had happened. I heard from a mom whose son was in Cub Scouts, and somebody had come and taught all the kids how to whittle, did a little demonstration, and then the guy, handed every kid a stick and a, that was a knife, it wouldn't be my story. No, handed every kid a potato peeler. You know, a potato peeler. First of all, there's always blood when I'm potato peeling. You know, it's dangerous to begin with. And then also, you think of like, you can't whittle with a potato peeler. Like our proud Native American farmers. I've been working on this totem pole for 7 years. Well, there's no no's, of course. It's just a bad idea. Girl Scouts are allowed to toast marshmallows, but they must have one knee on the ground. Why? Why? So they don't immolate themselves making that stupid s'more, you know, and getting their Joan of Arc badge. It's just so wacky. But because you get to a certain age, which I feel you can see with my playing like this, but anyway, you get to a certain age, and you start thinking everything's better in the old days, which of course it was. So you need proof that something really fundamentally had changed from the way I was raised and the way even today's younger parents were raised and what's happening now. And so I found what I consider the smoking potato peeler. New joke. So if you get the double DVD set of Sesame Street Old School, which I bet some of you have seen, you see cute things, right? You see children playing follow the leader, and the leader is actually the same size as them as opposed to one of us. You see kids playing in a vacant lot, and they're balancing on a beam, and there's like no mulch chips 8 inches deep below them. They go through one of those giant culvert things, and no homeless guy in the middle. It's PBS. And so they come out on the other end, and you just see everybody, a girl goes down Sesame Street, she meets Mr. Hooper, background check. So it's just cute, right? But before you watch any of this, a warning appears on screen, and it says, people think if you're skinny, you're in shape. I'm not. Okay. It says, the following is intended for adult viewing only and may not be suitable for our younger viewers. And I thought, creepy both ways. Mr. Hooper, why do you keep watching? No, they're not. I like the children. Whatever. So how did we get to this point where even Sesame Street cannot endorse Sesame Street, which was put on, it was like made by you guys. It was the geniuses of early childhood education who wanted to model a halcyon childhood. And suddenly, Sesame Street can't even show it, even though today our crime rate is back to the rate of 1963, which, if you weren't the president, was a totally fine, I say that, if you weren't the president, that was the joke. It was a fine time to be outside, and we all played outside. So how did we get to this point? Well, the small paper I was working for went under, and it's called the New York Sun, and when I say the sun died, people go, oh no, it did happen, but it's like S-U-N. New York Sun died. So I had a lot of time to research how did we get so afraid, and I will whip us through this because I think I have. Yes. Okay. So 4 reasons that I think we're so much more afraid than our parents were raising us. First thing, what do we always blame? Besides somebody in the White House, what do we always blame in general? The media. We blame the media because the media has found no story that sells as many papers and glues as many eyeballs to a screen as a white, middle, or preferably upper middle class child taken by a stranger. And that is why we all know the same names, Kaylee and Maddie, and there was another one with 2 E's. Jacob Wetterling here. Jacob, by the way, Patty Wetterling is the coolest person. Let's just pause for Patty Wetterling. Admiration. She's just amazing. Yeah, she's recognized how the laws just went too far. She's just amazing. But we know all these stories, and they sear themselves on our memory, and your brain works like Google, and you think, can my kid ride a bike? Can my kid wait at the bus stop? And up pop the easiest stories to remember because they were so scary, and we saw them so many years, and then there's, mini-series about them and stuff. And so usually if you're asking Google a question, its top sources, its top search results make sense. It's like, how do I get a cheap plane to Minnesota, as I was looking? And up they come. But with this, the top things that your brain fills with are the scariest, worst stories, and you think that they're the most relevant because they're easy to get. There's called the availability heuristic. So we start getting rewired by the media's obsession with these very scary, anomalous, horrible stories. And then they get recycled through all the drama shows. And so a couple years ago, somebody wrote to my blog and said, Lenore, did you watch Law and Order last night? And I was like, no. My husband, I don't know what he did. He wired our television through the blender. There was no way to turn it on. So they said, well, that's really pathetic. Why am I reading your blog? And she said, go figure out how to download that show. So this is where Maury, the older son, comes back in for a brief appearance. I asked, Maury, yes, Mom, would you illegally download me, ironically, Law and Order? And he said, sure. And so he did. And so here's the plot. This cute little boy goes up to his mom and says, Mom, can I take the subway by myself? And the mother goes, no, they had to make her ethnic. Look, I have Maury and Izzy. Guess what religion I am, okay? But she's Roma, and she's like, no, it's not be safe. And he said, sure, it'll be safe. It'll be fun. I'm like, you won't be safe. You're on Law and Order SVU. Okay. And the mom has been knitting him these adorable mittens and a scarf, and finally, reluctantly, she decides she's going to let them. She puts on the mittens, puts on the scarf, and off he goes to school. Does he get to school? No. Yes, he does. Does he get home? No. What do they find on the ground? Mitten. Because 2 mittens you can wear, right? But 1 mitten, it's because there's no empty swing. Anyway, so they find the mitten on the ground, and it's so sad. But the reason I tell you this story is so that I can humbly brag with these photos. So this is the picture. This is the boy on Law and Order. He's cute, right? That's my son. Wow, is right. Even when he saw him, he's like, whoop! Usually you don't think I don't look like the person you think I look like, but no, he recognized this. It was just weird and it's kind of work. Anyways, so we blame the media because the media is to blame. We live in a litigious society, that's number 2. Second reason that we're so much more afraid. And when you live in a litigious society, you start thinking about things sort of through the lens of what could go wrong, like a lawyer, what would I say in a court of law? And suddenly nothing seems safe enough. So in Richland, Washington, they got rid of all the swings on their schoolyards. And then also Spokane followed suit because every fear spreads. And the reason they gave is that when they looked at a list of playground equipment, the swings were at the top as the most dangerous. And I'm like, yeah, of course, because you got rid of the teeter-totters, you got rid of the merry-go-rounds, and now you got rid of the swings, and the slide is going, and the jungle gym is like the slide heats up like a frying pan. Something is always going to be at the top of the list. And I keep thinking, first they came for the teeter-totters, and I said nothing. Then they came for merry-go-rounds, because eventually nothing, we're going to be playing, and there's going to be like a slight lump. Hey, let's go play in the lump. Yeah, okay. I'm king of the lump. No, you're not. I'm king of the lump. Okay, you're king of the lump. It's just that nothing is going to be safe. But that's what we'll do this way. Third reason we're so afraid is we live in an expert society. Experts tell you you're doing it wrong. Okay, let me think about the time. Okay, I do have enough time. I need somebody to come up here, and they have to be willing to go like this and be my toddler, because this is early education, right? Okay, so I need a toddler. A toddler. A toddler, there we go. Okay, you're going to be my toddler, and I'm going to read an expert telling me something I couldn't possibly figure out on my own. What's your name?
Sarah.
Sarah, I'm really bad. I don't know my child's name. Okay, Sarah, I'm going to read from the bottom line. Our
Hug how to.
A hug how to. A hug how to. In a real parenting magazine. Okay. So, wait, sorry, that's good. Anyway, so what am I going to do? Trying to catch your little one in an embrace may seem a daunting task. Oh my God, this is so daunting. Wow. You're faster than most. All right, it is daunting. Conceded. Okay, but wait, you're not done. Okay, but say I catch you. I have to, first of all, I have to hug you because hugging has more benefits than an expression of love. Thank God, because love is certainly not enough. So what do I have to do? It says, the perfect formula, get down to your little one's level, okay, and wrap him in both arms. Let's wrap him. Oh! With chests touching. Oh, you're kidding! Let's try. Oh my God, it's so much better! I love it! I don't ache! This is so great, but my God, how long? Wait. Let's see. Try to hold the hug for about 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Yay! This is great. One of my best hugs. Thank you so much. Thank you. Come on. They're treating parents, moms really, they're parenting. They might as well say moms, right? They're treating us like sub-morons. I mean, and then coming up with reasons for, I feel bad for whoever had to write this. I'm a freelance writer too, get paid by the word. So she has to come up with all these reasons. It's important that if you don't know how to hug your kid, you don't have a kid. You know, it's just so crazy. It's like, sort of like pick them up, but then keep holding them. You know, that's a hug. So, anyways, this advice goes on, and at Halloween they tell you, you know, don't put a mask on your kid's face that occludes, their favorite word, occludes their vision, and don't put any makeup on them because they'll break out in hives and you'll need the EpiPen, and don't put them in a big costume because they'll flop all over and they'll die in traffic, but don't put them in a tiny costume that constricts their breathing. And I'm thinking like, yeah, this has really happened. Yes, honey, you look so cute. You're trying to poop. You squirt. You're going to the squirt. What? You're what's a hot do? You know, it has never happened in the history of Halloween that a child wore a costume that strangled them to death with like a corset. It just doesn't happen. But we just get so much advice thrown at us, like vomited at us all the time, that we start thinking, gee, I thought I knew how to, you know, not just tighten my corset kid to death, but I guess I don't. So anyway, so the experts are driving us crazy, and then there's the marketplace. And I brought some examples. If you know what they are, it is not a guess if I ask you to guess what they are. So only guess if you don't know what they are. So what are these? Ooh, what are these? The guessers, please.
Wristband.
No, yeah. Guess again. Close. Knee pads!
Oh.
Baby knee pads! Yeah. Because you decorated the nursery in crushed glass. Less sparkles. So, the thing about these is that, first of all, they're insane. But also, you want the kid to have a little friction so they have an incentive to start trying to walk, right? Because you don't want the kid going, Mom, I have a beer. And yet, these are on the market. If you actually Google these and start reading the comments, it's fun. It's a fun one. Okay, this is my favorite item. Nobody loves it as much as me. These are table toppers. Table toppers are disposable placemats. They are eco-friendly, except for the fact that they exist. And here's what they do. Table toppers provide on-the-go protection from germs, dirt, and cleaning chemicals on restaurant and food court tables.
Oh.
Yeah, oh God. Yeah. Ooh, that's like a great row. If I had a camera, I would be taking a picture of that row. It's like, anyways, the point that's interesting to me about this is that if it provides protection from germs and dirt and cleaning chemicals, that means that if you get to the food court and you're scraping off the old taco salad, thank God you have a tabletop. But if you get there and it's clean and sparkling and it smells lemony, you know, thank God you have a tabletop. So what I love about this product is it proves what I'm trying to say, which is that you are being told that your child is in danger no matter what. Clean, dirty, doesn't matter. Somehow you have to do something or buy something that nobody had to buy in the history of the world, but now you need it. And then last item is, I guess I should it's only the guessers. What is it? Rubber ducky's cute, but it's wrong. Okay, right, but a partial answer. Right? It is the baby bathwater temperature duck. Who has one? Yeah, a guy. So as you know, you put this in the baby's bath, and you pull it out after a few minutes. If the word hot appears on the bottom, then you know the water is hot, because you couldn't possibly put your hand in. And you take it out, and there's like only bones left. Just like they dropped in the constricted costume. So here's my favorite line. This is on the back. Getting back to lawyers. Sorry, Diane. I love Diane. She works with us. She's a lawyer. Anyways, on the back it says, caution. Caution one. Adults should always place hands in bath water to test the temperature before placing baby in tub. So what is this duck doing? Duck is fucking with your mom. I thought I once took a bath and I thought my hand was too hot and I added boiling water. No, it's making me think, who am I? What planet I am? Is it a crazy thing? So what happens when you get to this point? When you've been told, this is why I never blame helicopter parents. People think I'm the anti-helicopter mom. I'm the anti-helicopter culture mom, because as I just showed you, it is a culture of experts and products and news stories and law and order that is making you afraid to do anything. And if you do anything, it's like, how would you feel if something bad went on? So what is the apotheosis of this? Well, we're stricken, and we have to keep our eyes on our kids all the time. We start blaming the moms who take their eyes off their kids all the time. So I recently interviewed a bunch of like 1st through 5th graders at a school, I won't say where, and I asked them, what would you love to do? You know, if you could be free, if you could do something on your own, what is your dream? And the boy who has become my whipping boy, he doesn't know this, is this 3rd grade boy who said, I would like to get to judo by myself. I was like, that's great! How are you gonna, ride your bike there? You're gonna walk? You're gonna take a skateboard? How are you gonna get there? And he's like, no, I'm going to open the car door, and then I get out and I close it and I look both ways. And then I walk into judo while my mom parks the car in the parking lot. So his dream of freedom was not being walked in by his mom. It was like the 37 seconds of freedom from the sidewalk into the dojo or whatever you go into. So trying to change that. And I have some ideas for how to do it. Diane is actually helping me. That's a red leaf. It's always good to have a red leaf on your side. Yes? Yes. So before I tell you what we're working on, and I have like another minute, I'm going to have you turn to each other and talk about this in little groups of like 3, 4, 5. Just think for a second about something that you loved doing as a kid that you don't let your own kids do, if you have your own kids, or that you don't see kids doing anymore. Okay, so just turn to little groups of whoever you're around, get to know your neighbors, even though they're strangers, and talk about it. I'll give you 3 minutes. Nobody has a story. Yes, you do. Yeah.
When we were kids, we played night games with the neighborhood kids.
Wow.
We would be out really late, way past dark, running around the neighborhood. I don't ever remember my parents having any concern or, I don't think they cared in the sense that.
They didn't care much.
I mean, they didn't have us cared.
Right,
about it.
right. Everyone is different.
Now, the kids in the neighborhood, they don't play with each other.
Right, I have a solution, but that's true. Okay, other people, other stories. Night game, was it night tag?
It's just everything. Capture the flag.
Yes.
Bullying the younger kids.
Yes. Yay, bullying. Anybody else who have a childhood? Yes.
Oh, we walked through other people's properties
Yeah.
at different houses.
Yes, okay. Yeah, that was totally, is that like not done? Is that, I don't. Wow, why? Because everybody feels too, like it's an imposition, or it's just not, I mean, like, that's an interesting one. That's one I haven't heard.
We just moved to a new neighborhood like a year ago, and that was one of the first conversations we had with our backdoor neighbors. Can my daughter cut through your yard because her friend's house is right there?
And what they say?
Oh yeah, they were totally good with it. They've
Okay.
got kids, but their next door neighbor, no, don't step on it.
Wow. That's when you start throwing really loud parties. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
When I was a kid, we would go to Chicago for the summer, and our aunt put us in gymnastics, and she let us catch the bus to gymnastics.
Back and forth, regular city bus. How old?
My older sister was like 12. I was maybe like, me and my cousin were maybe like 10, and then we had younger sisters. They're twins, and they were like 8.
Wow, that's
So
cool.
12, 10, and 8.
Right, a little gaggle of you. That's neat. Did you like that part?
Yeah, I always fall asleep on the bus.
I do that now. I want to sleep on the subway. Anyone else? Yes? And then you, then you.
Oh, I was sharing that I think I was about 5, maybe 6. We used to be able to walk anywhere, just out playing. And one time we did get lost. We didn't know where we were. But our mailman recognized us, and we got in the mail truck.
Unforgettable. Unforgettable. And you were delivered. That's so cool. Wow, who else? Who else? Wait, there was a person, yeah, you and then I'll stop. Okay.
Actually, my neighbor here has said she used to catch tadpoles in the drainage dishes.
So you guys drinking tadpoles here?
I taught preschool. I've been teaching preschool for 25 years.
Yeah.
And 15 years ago, me and my mom would take our kids down to the creek every Friday and wade in the creek and catch crawdads.
Wow.
It was the best thing ever. And I don't
Wow.
think our parents even knew.
You mean the parents who sent their
Our
kids to you?
parents, yeah, they did.
I know. Didn't they come home with crawdads? Where'd you get that? Oh, someone was selling them.
Some of our kids fell in stinging nettles and just were covered in rashes. It was hilarious. And I was like,
That's what you want from your daycare.
how do that? We told them to do that. They did it.
She still laughs.
But it's like, it's a learning experience.
It is a learning experience. That's the weird thing. Somebody was explaining to me that we think that like teaching and learning are the same thing. When you can learn from teaching, but you can also learn from nettles, right? Yeah.
You learn from screwing around is what really is.
Right. Everything is learning. I mean, that's what's so strange, especially with early child. So now I started Free Range Kids, and then a couple of years ago I started a nonprofit, and Diane is part of it, Diane Bradley, but it's called Let Grow. And our mission is to make it easy, normal, and legal to give kids back some independence. And so we have 2 initiatives that we're doing through schools, and I'd love you guys to spread the word. One is the Let Grow Play Club, because like Think Small, we really believe that free play is a way that kids learn so many things that are, certainly when you're a little kid, but all along, really possible to learn just sitting in a chair. Because if you're playing with somebody, you have to make it fun enough that they want to keep playing with you, and that's the beginning of empathy and creativity and reading another person, getting along. So the Let Grow Play Club says, well, look, why don't you just leave schools open for free play after school? You got all the kids there already, mixed ages, which we think is a great thing. They are someplace safe, so no matter what neighborhood you're in, they were safe for the first 7 hours, they were safe for another 3, and they're off their devices. So you have all these kids able to play together, and if there's a person there who's like a lifeguard as opposed to a coach, They watch, and if something terrible happens, they're there. But otherwise, the kids have to organize their own fun, and you leave out a lot of loose parts. I'm sure you're loose parts believers. You know, cardboard boxes and tape and whatever. And it's just a great thing. And we've had great results so far with teachers love it. There's waiting lists at the schools where there is a free play club because kids are desperate to play. And there's so little time to play. Because if you go to a class after school, it's enriching in one way, but it's not, it's not free play. And the other thing we're doing is called the Let Grow Project, where all the teachers send all the kids home, and their homework is do something on your own without your parents, preferably outside. And this is really from kindergarten up through 8th grade at this point. And I'm trying to decide which story to tell you from that. I'll tell you this one. We got a girl who decided for her Let Grow Project, she was going to bake an independence cake. And she actually made a big poster that said, how to bake an independence cake. She's terrible at spacing. But anyway, so what did she do? She decided she would walk to the grocery. She was in 6th grade. On her own for the first time. She said, on my way there, I memorized it. She said, on my way there, it was scary. She said, everyone looked angry, like they were going to reach out and snatch me. Believe me, getting there was no picnic. But she got to the grocery after being scared, and she's going up and down the aisle, got flour, sugar, eggs, takes forever. Finally, she's checking out, and the lady behind her says, excuse me, would you watch my... No. No one is leaving here. That was funny the first time. But anyway, so she buys it, she pays for it with her own money, because it's an independence cake, she pays with her allowance money, and then she said, I actually have to find the actual word. She said, on the way there. Okay, the way home seemed much shorter and more pleasant because I was already used to the walk. So one afternoon, one errand of independence, and the world changed. It went from this scary thing where she shouldn't be, where, how would you feel if something terrible happened, to a place where she could be part of things, like you on your bus in Chicago. And the thing about this project is it not only changes the kid, it changes the parent. Because when the parent sees the kid come home, and they will, the parent, it's like me saying, it's like, you are so proud. I almost don't understand, for a while, it took me a while to understand, why are parents ecstatic when all their kid did was, go to their friend's house and come back? And I finally realized it's because our job as parents is to raise kids who will be independent one day, who will be alive when we're not. And until you see them do something on their own, all you know is they're okay with you. But to know that they can be okay without you is an existential relief and a great joy. And you've done your job, and there they are going. So I will put in a word for these two projects, the Let Grow Project, the Let Grow Play Club. You'll find everything that you need, and it's all free because we're a nonprofit, at letgrow.org. And with this, I hand it over to the panel. Thank you very much.
Lenore, thank you so much. And I'm glad Lenore's going to join the panel. We're hoping the caffeine will kick in on the next hour.
So Diane and I are sharing a room. You will be with me all night. That'll be fun. I gotta type! Oh my God!
Okay, so if the panelists could come up and take your seat, and I will introduce our moderator.
Hi, Marty! Sheila!
Okay, it's
Mike!
All right, my turn. It's my pleasure to welcome and introduce to you our moderator for tonight's discussion, Think Small board member and mother of 5, Tanya Skogerbo. Tanya is Vice President, Customer Relations at Sleep Number by Select Comfort. Tanya?
Thanks, everybody. It is my pleasure to be here, and what a fun talk, Lenore. Thank you. I was laughing with my girlfriend that I am the mother of 5, and I was feeling really proud about how non-helicopter I am, and that was just all completely myth busted. So, right, like it just depends on your comparison. So I'm gonna try and turn the lights on here. See if that helps, if that's better, so everybody can see you. Okay, great. So I've got a few questions preset, and I first want to have all of the panelists introduce themselves, and then we've got some minutes for all of your questions. So be ready for the panelists. We have with us, thank you so much, a lot of experts in the early childhood space, and I'm actually going to let each one of them introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Erin Erickson.
Hello, I'm Erin. I am a nurse practitioner, and I also have a master's in public health and maternal child health. And my mom and I are co-hosts and owners of a parenting podcast called Mom Enough. And so I have a lot of experience because I've learned a ton from our guests. Not that I'm necessarily the expert, but I'll try to, zone in on all the amazing information I've learned from our parenting podcast guests. But as a nurse practitioner, I work a ton with parents, women primarily, and I am every day in touch with women and men who are struggling with these very issues of how do you raise kids who are successful contributors to society and are independent while also managing your own stress about the whole process.
Okay, well, I'm Erin's mother, and that's my greatest claim to fame, and it's really just a delight to be able to work with Erin. For 13 years now, we've been working together. But my main career prior to that was that I was on the faculty at the University of Minnesota for more years than I care to count. I have professorships in both child psychology and family social science, but I mostly worked on the bridge between research, practice, and policy. So directing large organizations within the university that tried to bring research to bear on practical issues that affect all of our lives. And as a part of that, I ended up doing a lot of media work, both when I was at the university, and I've still continued that. So I've appeared for 24 years on CARE TV doing child and family topics. It's been delightful to work with them. And then Erin and I started Mom Enough originally on the radio for 4 years as a live radio show. But that was a little burdensome in terms of my stage of life and liking to travel and dividing my time between Minnesota and California. So we took it to the internet as a podcast, and we had almost 500,000 visits to our website last month alone. Wow. So we're reaching a lot of parents. And how that relates to tonight's event is that as I think probably all of you in this room, I've had a huge concern about what has happened with parenting in the years since I raised Erin and her brother. They were what I often have referred to as the last cohort of free-range children, even before I knew you and before you started the movement. But I think we're really misguided because I think we're focusing on a lot of risks that are minute, really, in terms of things that really threaten our children. And we're overlooking a lot of things that are a risk because we're being so protective. So getting that message out to a lot of parents, and as Erin said, interviewing terrific people. Everyone up here we've had on our podcast. Sheila and Mike, and we interviewed Lenore just a couple of weeks ago, and we'll be posting that podcast on May 13th, I think. So that's me.
All right. So I'm Mike Hubert, and I'm the author of Embracing Rough and Tumble Play, and I have a podcast, Teaching with the Body and Mind. And most of my work focuses on the need for young children to take risks. I mostly talk about children 8 and younger. I certainly think that older kids need to take risks and adults need to take risks too. But I really focus on the early childhood, and I think one of the things that my work is really focused on is that in the early childhood field in general, I think we've taken brain research and talk about self-regulation, but what we actually work on is co-regulation. And what we really need to do is let kids figure things out a lot more than we do, and let them try things and let them get hurt. And that falling down is the main way they learn. And our job isn't to keep kids from falling down, it's to be there to pick them up when they need it. That's, usually the simple way to talk about it. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Hi, I'm Sheila Williams-Ridge, and I'm the director of the University of Minnesota Lab School, just across the river from here. I have 4 adult daughters, so I successfully got them all through childhood. Even though they were pretty free-ranging, they grew up on 120 acres in West St. Paul, Minnesota. And there was a time where I let my 5 and 7-year-old walk in the woods, and I hadn't seen them in a couple of hours, so I took a walk. I called for them, they didn't answer. I took a walk, and up the trail was a person that I didn't know, a guy, a male. I know. And for a second I thought, should I worry? And I said, well, no. Like, why would I worry? Like, most people are great people. And so I said hello, and he said, hi, are you Sheila? And I said, well, yes, I am. And he said, I met Sierra and Olivia, and they are following a deer, so they can hear you calling them, but they're not making any noise because they're following a deer. And they said, thank you, which direction did you see them? And so he kind of pointed me off in that way, and I went, sure enough, there they were, like hunkered down, looking at some deer kind of, making a bed for the night. And so it was about dusk, and they were really excited about it. And I was like, okay, like, I can do this. They're safe in the world. It made me feel good. And then this was in the fall. And then in the spring, Daniel, I got to know this person later on, actually had a garden plot next to ours in the community garden. And so we got to know each other, and it was great. But I had that moment of, am I supposed to worry about this? And then I thought, no, it'll be okay. But yeah, my work is in nature-based education primarily. And I have a book out in front called Nature-Based Learning for Young Children, anytime, anywhere, on any budget, because I really believe it should be accessible to all children.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so Sheila, if you don't mind, we're going to start with you.
Sure.
Okay, so you talk about kind of living on the nature center for kids, and then you authored this book. What does letting kids explore in nature produce for success later in life?
Sure. So I think the main thing for me is that they are happy. And right, we think about our children and what we want them to be when they grow up, and we want them to be happy, successful. We think that successful means that they'll be happy in their lives, and that happiness is not a thing that we should think of as this end goal. You'll be happy if you get a good job. You'll get a good job if you go to a good college. You'll go to a good college if you go to a good high school. You have to do really well in middle school, to set yourself up to do well. And children should be happy the whole time. Living life is not for an end product. It is every day. And we should allow children to be happy. So there's that. But of course, there are a lot more benefits. Research has really blossomed in the last few years about all of the wonderful things that being outside and connecting with nature does for children. So there are social-emotional benefits, there are mental health benefits, things like children sleep better. I think that alone, right? Like, for parents, that your children sleep better at night, that's a wonderful reason to have them outside and busy and engaged. The lower obesity levels, more confidence and resilience when things don't go their way. Some of the other benefits are cognitive, so there are higher academic gains. There's a wonderful research library at the Children in Nature Network. It's at childreninnature.org, and you can look up, like, what are the gains in early childhood or in nature-based learning for math, and there are research articles that support all of those things. So I think that kind of all of those things are wonderful, but I think their joy and happiness in the world is, for me, number one.
Yeah, I think good reminder about it's not an end goal. It's like an everyday goal. Love it. Mike, so you're a teacher and a trainer. You shared with us that you wrote the book Embracing Rough and Tumble Play. So what was really your goal when you think about the goal of the book for teachers and parents and kind of talking about this topic?
Yeah, well, so it started with, we started a discussion group just because there was a few of us would meet at conferences, actually Sheila and a bunch of people who worked at the same preschool, and we would always get into these conversations about risk, about nature, and we started doing a discussion group, and rough and tumble play seemed to be one that was still, a lot of people thought, oh, yeah, I can see why it would be good, but I could never do it at my center, or licensing won't allow it, or all these like excuses, and there were some of us who were like, really, because I do it, and I don't have any more injuries, and research shows there's no more injuries in rough and tumble play. I always found that the most injuries happened in the bathroom or kids playing with blocks, children cleaning up blocks. In a classroom, you get more than 2 kids with blocks trying to put them in the same place. And that's where injuries happen. But I saw that teachers were afraid to take that first step. So the book really came out of, we would do speaking engagements first and then decided there needed to be a book. And I wrote the proposal as the 4 of us writing the book, but of course, then it was time to write the book, and I went, well, no, Mike, you can write it. After I'd already said, yeah, 250 pages, lots of photos, and now like, okay, so I have to hire a photographer. But so I did it myself, but it was important for me to have baby steps. So the part about woodworking, here's the types of nails that are going to work, fairly successfully with kids. Because if you've ever done woodworking with preschoolers, nails bend so easily, but roofing nails don't. And things like that, just some basics that rather than trying with the wrong type of nails or hammers and then failing and not trying again, which is what I find when I speak with people, it's like, here's a list, go try it. And even for roughhousing, if you've never wrestled with a kid, hug them, and now I know, first I can get the dark with a hug, and then you fall down, right? So you're just adding one more step after the 3 seconds, instead of letting go, you fall down. And that's how you wrestle. But the idea of the book really was to make it a little more simple, and I really wanted colored photographs that made it look fun, and so that was a thing, and I didn't know how to afford a photographer to do as many photographs, and luckily somebody I had taught was now 21, and she was in doing photography, and so I said, where are you working right now? How much do you get paid? I'll pay you twice as much. Follow me around to child care centers. And so we did that. And my favorite moment was, because I talked about how, our kids don't paint with a paintbrush, they paint with whatever they can. And so there's this kid just rubbing paint on this easel with his hands. And so we would go to these child care centers and I would point, of where she should take photos. And by this point, she always knew. Before I pointed, she's already, and this is my own classroom. The kid's doing it, and I go to point, and she's already, click it, and then she turns to me and says, that's where I became an artist. So in some ways, that's the reason I wrote the book, right? That more kids will get that inspiration, I guess. I can't answer questions quickly.
No. Good storytelling, very engaging. Okay, Dr. Marty. So you and your daughter, Erin, you shared address parenting issues on your show, regular basis. So can you talk about, given your experience, you were saying how you have some concern about the way parenting is happening today. Can you talk from your perspective, what's the danger, right? So we've kind of heard from some of the other folks, but from your perspective, what's the danger of the way we're parenting today?
Well, I think there are multiple dangers, both for the children and for the parents, because parents are under extraordinary pressure and feel like they have to do everything and be everything. And not only do they have to keep their children safe from all of these magnified dangers that we imagine out there, but they also have to make sure that their children don't have to struggle too much. So we have both helicopter parenting, overprotectiveness, and we also have what a Swedish friend of mine who's with a mental health clinic in northern Sweden calls curling parents. Curling, where you push the stone along the ice. These are the parents who are sweeping the snow away so that stone just sails smoothly without any friction. And both of those things really stunt our children's development in very major ways. We prevent our children from learning how to do basic tasks involved in daily living. We don't involve them in contributing to the smooth running of the household, carrying their own weight to a certain extent. And then we really protect them from having to struggle with problems. And so when kids have an opportunity to do problem solving on their own, when they're playing with other kids and they're not being directed by adults in highly structured activities, which is where most kids spend most of their time other than on screens. So those two things are just eating up a lot of our kids' time. Where are the opportunities to decide what you're going to do, to develop initiative, to develop persistence, to stick with things even when they're rough, to develop the social skills and problem-solving skills to be able to work through a tough time, whether that's about the specific work or project you're doing or about the people you're doing it with. These are all the life skills that you need every day of your life, right? That I need every day of my life. And our kids are being deprived an opportunity to build those skills. And they're not learning what to do when they fall down, when they have a difficult time and are emotionally distraught. We just hate to see that. But if they learn how to pick themselves up, and yes, use support and be comforted by their parents, but then be supported in going on and figuring out what to do next and how to go on beyond the challenge, beyond the problem. Those are just hugely important things. And as I said at the beginning, this is really a problem for parents as well, because we're making ourselves crazy by trying to do everything. And then where is the joy? I love, Sheila, that you talked about happiness and that should be a part of childhood, certainly at every stage. I mean, really it ought to be a part of all of our lives. But where's the happiness? Where's the joy when we're constantly just feeling driven to protect and to prevent our children from having any kind of problem? That's just not working for any of us, and it's not going to work for our society long term. My friends in academia tell me that they get phone calls from parents of college students in their classes. I can't even imagine what I would have done when I was teaching at the university if that ever happened. But that's a tragedy. You know, that just should not be happening. And so that means you start when your kids are babies, toddlers, preschoolers, and right on up.
Thank you. Okay, that's a perfect segue actually to your daughter. So, Dr. Aaron, I think all of us are thinking, okay, so we recognize we've got this big problem, so what, right? What do we do? So you work with parents and children every day. How do you get parents to move outside their comfort zone and let kids explore?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It comes up all the time because, like my mom said, I really can't think of a parent that hasn't come in expressing extreme overwhelm with their job as a parent. And a lot of that is because they're doing so much for their kids. Kind of the curling parenting, you know, not giving their children opportunities to fail or to figure things out on their own. And so I think a big part, because I like to focus on the physiology of what's going on with this, is I look at the physiology of stress and I draw diagrams. I talk to my patients about what's happening in your brain when you're stressed. So when you think about a child being kidnapped, or you think about something horrible happening in a park, that you're not able to make a rational decision because your amygdala, which is a pair of almond-shaped structures in your brain, it's kind of like your brain's security guard, and there's pathways within your limbic system, which is part of your emotional regulation, that actually decreases access in your prefrontal cortex. So that's the part of your brain right here that's involved in executive functioning, decision making, and a variety of other important functions. And so when you're in a stress state because of all the fear in the, you know, both in our culture, but that you see on the media, and that you hear from experts telling you how not to get injured in a hug or whatever they're telling you, you're not making rational decisions. You're doing what you think is right in that moment, but it's not based on facts. And so I really encourage parents to pay attention and become more mindful of what's driving their choices as a parent. And so when you choose not to let your 12-year-old take the city bus to go to Southdale to go shopping with their friends because you're afraid that some male is going to do something to them, you're acting on a suppressed activity in your prefrontal cortex. You're not basing that on fact. Your children in general are usually safe, and it's a great opportunity. And they all have cell phones now. I think we should probably be way more concerned about that than we are. But you know, they need opportunities to figure things out without you there. And if they aren't given the space and the freedom to do that while they are in your care, they're going to be really lost when they're not in your care. I regularly tell my older son is sometimes a little awkward. He's lovely, sweetest person on the planet, but a little bit awkward, and he does some things that his friends find kind of annoying. And so I frequently say to him, you know, I love you more than anything. It's much better to have this lesson while you are in the context of a grace, an environment of grace, because it doesn't matter right now. You can make a mistake and you have a backup.
But when you get to college, people probably aren't gonna love you in the same way I do. I hope they will, but they might not. They might think this is annoying. They might tell you like not to do something, or you might get in trouble and not be able to, you're not gonna have a parent to help you problem solve if you can't get out of it on your own. So we need to give our children every single opportunity to learn now. And we do that by giving them developmentally appropriate freedom. And unfortunately, what we currently identify as developmentally appropriate is an extremely narrow view of what children are capable of. So we're really limiting our children. And we need to be mindful of where that's coming from. And it's coming from fear and our brain's response to fear. So my approach is usually start paying attention to why you're making the decisions you're making. And if you notice that fear is getting in the way of you being the parent your children need you to be, then start working on that. For some parents, it's a paralyzing fear that actually requires therapy or mental health intervention, and that there's no shame in that. For other parents, maybe they just need to start being more aware, or take a few deep breaths before you hand over the $1.25 to hop on the bus. So I think that's another option as well.
Great, thank you. Good advice. Lenore,
Yes.
you're up next.
Oh.
Okay.
I agree with everything that everyone has said. I'm like, what a panel.
I know.
Taking notes. I'm like,
I see you
still
taking
that.
notes, taking notes. Okay, so you talked about the shift. We've all been talking about, the generation that was raised with a lot more freedom and where we are today. So what do you think are the major causes in that cultural shift for us here in America?
Oh, well, all the stuff I was talking about. And then there's two ones there's actually 5 more that I can tell you.
Good.
One is that with all the technology, it's really easy to know everything that your kids do. Harry Potter, there was the Marauders map. Do you remember that? It's like you could see where somebody was on a map, even though you weren't with them. It's like, that's everybody's phone. Yeah, it's like that's not even creative anymore. It's like boring. So with this omniscience that no one has had since the beginning, no one's had ever, right? I mean, there's nobody who's been as omniscient as we could be now, just taking out our phone and knowing our kids' grades for the test that day and where they are and who they texted and what they did, what sites they went to. With omniscience comes the idea that maybe you should also be omnipotent. So there's this enormous weight on parents that if you can know everything that's going on, why wouldn't you? Because then you could prevent anything bad from happening. So I think when you have that new burden, you feel even more like you should be in control. And if anything bad happens, you weren't paying enough attention. And so I think part of the reason is that because you can know so much, we feel we must know so much, we feel we must hover because we have the availability to do it. And so that's one of the things that's driving us crazy. And then I had all these other reasons that have led my mind. Let's just stick with omniscience. Yeah, they're not in my book because they came about later. Yeah, so I'll blog about it tomorrow. Go to electro.org.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, right? Because you can know. We all think we're supposed to then know.
Well, also, if you do know, there's like this cushion of, somebody explained to me, like, if I had been at the fair with my mom and I'd gone one direction, she'd gone another direction, and it had been an hour of her screaming for me and trying to find me, and she told somebody this the next day, they'd say, kids. They would sympathize with her as opposed to, didn't you give her a phone? Didn't you write her number on her arm? Didn't you, track her? And why did you let her out of your sight? And what, were you paying attention to something else? Instead of looking at you, why didn't you have her on one of those little leashy things? So it feels like the empathy between parents has to return to some better level, as opposed to just saying you did something wrong and you're paying the price and I would never do that. It's like blaming the victim. We blame the parents when anything bad happens to their kids, and we'd all feel great happiness if I'm going to trust you. If something bad goes wrong, I'm not going to blame you. It's a complex world. And if we could all somehow say that to each other, I think we'd be less insane.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. A lot of parenting judgment or help. Yeah, community help. So I'm going to open it up to anybody on the panel. We've got a couple of questions that I think are really interesting about the distinction between rural and urban areas. Do you think that there is a difference in how prevalent this culture shift has become in rural versus urban areas? Or do you think it's everywhere?
I vote for everywhere.
I don't know. I've never seen any data that just explores a difference in that. I think parents everywhere are fearful. And I do actually, because the clinic I work at is a very specialized clinic, so I see patients from rural areas and urban areas, and this is a universal concern. And I think, as I mentioned before, this overwhelm, a lot of it is worry, but a lot of it is parents are doing too much for their kids. So they're doing their day job, they're doing their evening work at home, and then they're doing all this extra work for their kids. Like driving their homework to school when they forget it.
Yeah, I have to throw in there, since no one's taken the title of Words to Dad, there's like, so every school, so I have a 15-year-old who's autistic and has been riding their bike to a coffee shop on their own for years, and and it's great too, because they just have to say to the person, like, I'm autistic, so I don't want to look in your eyes. Can I have, an Italian soda? Heavy on the soda, on their flavor. I mean, but so there's these portals. Every school I've gone to, there's the classroom portal. You can check on your kids' homework. And I don't know the password to it. Yeah, and because when you talk about that, it's like,
you are the worst.
Like, I know. Why do I want to know? Like, and then when we get to the conference, the teacher's often like, well, there's this or something. So, how are they doing? Like, I don't really care in a way what their grades are. I want to know, what are they interested in and what are they doing? And that's much more important to me. And granted, I now chose a high school that's project-based, and in a lot of ways, I think it's a little more like college, because you decide if you're taking classes or if you're going to figure out a different way to meet graduation requirements. And so even my 5th-year-old, they're only a sophomore or a freshman, and they're always like, I talk to my other friends in high school, and they're talking about their classes, and I'm just thinking, now which graduation requirements will that meet? And they already have that in their head. So in some ways, it's this higher thinking, because it's the trust that kids can do it, and they walk to their own therapy appointment and then walk back to the school. And I don't know, it's just that thing of, I guess we have this, I found the school where all the parents are kind of like, oh yeah, of course, they would just walk and do that. Because so many other schools have been like, wait, let your kid do what, and yeah, I don't know why I talked about that.
That's such a good point though, Mike. I think we're not letting our kids be independent with their schoolwork either. And I mean, I love that you don't check that, because if we're also micromanaging their schoolwork, what happens when they get to college?
I should say that we brainstorm. Yeah. Like we will often be sitting in a coffee shop. It's like, well, I have to write this play about, right now they're writing about being hearing sensitive, about their own hearing sensitivity. They want to write a play about someone like that. And so they'll bounce ideas off of me, but it's kind of like the same way I would be talking to my, like talking
like
to you.
Right here.
And to me it's like, yeah, if you treat the person, as a person, and not like this thing. I like the package metaphor you use. That's actually one of the first things I did at the school I work at, which you two are familiar with, was changing it to arrival and departure.
Oh, wow.
Because it just bugs me that it's like, whose point of view are we using here? It's not a warehouse. And nobody there thought of it that way, and yet when I brought up the language, it's like, oh yeah, like, why would we call it that?
Maybe you wrote to me, because somebody wrote to me and told me this is great.
Oh, it wasn't me, but nothing personal.
Okay, I'm gonna go just a bit off script, because I love kind of the storytelling and the context you guys are giving. So can you maybe share, anybody, an experience where you had a conversation with a parent, right, who thought they were doing everything really well, like maybe many of us here in the audience, and how you connected with an aha moment? Because I've had lots of aha moments, but right, we're actually asking people to change, which is oftentimes the most difficult thing to ask people to do. So even though intellectually I'm hearing you, can I just share like any context or story? I know, Lenore, you did kind of a TV show too, and Dr. Marty, things that maybe like, what was the pivotal moment to get people to change their behavior?
Well, I have a story that this goes back to my research at the university, which focused to a very large extent on parent-infant attachment and how foundational that is to children's lifelong development, to human beings' lifelong development, you know, how we expect people to treat us, how we view ourselves in relationship, the security we feel inside that allows us to go out and deal with the world. And so a lot of people contact me with questions about attachment. And there's this whole movement called attachment parenting. I'm not a part of that movement, and in fact, I totally support the people who want to do attachment parenting, which involves a whole lot of skin-to-skin contact, and maybe sleeping with your child, and you know, breastfeeding for a very long time. I'm not taking issue with doing those things, but the attachment research is so much more than that, and it really emphasizes not just building that close connection in infancy, but then intentionally using that as the secure base from which your child goes out and builds relationships with other people and explores and falls down and, you know, does all the things we've been talking about. So I get a lot of parents, and I'm thinking of one particular parent who emailed me from Norway, just distraught as could be. I mean, you could just feel her pain in reading the email, and that's something. And she was doing attachment parenting, and she had gotten the message that she could never leave her baby, even now this child was like 8 or 9 months, with a babysitter, couldn't go out on a date with her husband, couldn't have any time for herself, and you know, had just totally missed the letting go piece that is very much a part of attachment. And attachment isn't just about babies, it goes forever, you know. Even after our parents die, we often touch base with them internally. We internalize who they were to us, sometimes for better or worse. You know, attachment's not always secure as we would wish it. But anyway, this mother was, you know, just having no life, and she was in therapy because she was just so overwhelmed with anxiety, and thinking that if she did anything that moved her away from, you know, direct contact with her child 24/7, she was going to be harming her child. Well, I spent a long time writing to this mom, and then we actually made a phone appointment. I've never done that. I get a lot of email, and I couldn't believe I did it, but we had a very, very moving phone conversation. And, you know, she said it was just absolutely transforming to be liberated to let her child grow. And I made a lot of the points we've all talked about here tonight, you know, how important that is to lifelong development. And so I still have heard from her, and she actually is spending a year in California, and we're hoping to meet in person, because it was just one of those really moving things for me. But I think that's typical of so many parents today, that they're not giving the whole picture, the whole story, and they're trying so hard to do what they have felt or come to believe is right. And, you know, it's really not. It's not right for them, and it's not right for their children in the long run.
Yeah,
thank you. Okay,
sorry, you remind me that you did the television show, which was like flaming disaster. And the second, can't tell you that was. Anyways, I liked it. But so the idea was that I would go and visit. The producers found me very, very anxious families, super anxious. Like one woman was feeding her 10-year-old in his mouth, you know, and another lady had her 15-year-old. He could go where he wanted, but he had to text her. And then he had to follow it up with a phone call. Why did she have a text? So to prove that it wasn't the kidnapper pretending to be him, texting, "Mom, I'm fine." And he goes, "Mom, I'm fine." That was me. And a woman who got a skateboard, and he could only ride it standing still on the grass. It's not riding. But anyway, so the first family had the one feeding the 10-year-old in his mouth. So the whole idea was that I would give them challenges, like the mom had to leave, and I taught them how to use a knife. And then the next day the camera was broken. All we did was slice food for a really long time. But when they finally got the cameras back to working, we gave him a bike, and he had to learn how to ride a bike. And his mother had never, ever wanted to ride a bike because of two things. One is he could fall, right? The metaphor and the reality that we keep talking about. The other one is that he would be so frustrated. Well, of course, he's frustrated. For 10 years, he hasn't ridden a bike. But anyways, so that day, he learns how to ride a bike. And actually, I was a little, you know, I was the pawn of, anyways, he learned how to ride a bike while the cameras were rolling, which I thought would be very difficult. And he could basically go from here to, like, the middle of the room, except it was flat. And there were no chairs. And it was a parking lot. But anyways, when he came home, and of course this turns out to be true of every television show ever, while the cameras were outside, the mother came in and there was her mother, a Russian grandmother, and she said, guess what, Mom? Sammy can ride a bike. And the grandmother goes, what? Our Sammy can ride a bike? And she goes, yeah, Sammy can ride a bike. And they danced around, Sammy can ride a bike! Sammy can ride a bike! And they were outlandishly proud. They were thrilled, and they were literally dancing around. I'm like, gee, who kept him from riding a bike? But that's the only thing, I mean, that converted me into, you gotta, the experience has to come before the revelation. Because thinking about like, oh, you know, kids in the past could certainly walk to school at a certain age or ride their bikes. You know, you can have all the knowledge, you can have the amazing statistics, we're living the safest times, blah, blah, blah. But you really have to see it for it to inhabit you and rewire your brain. So for me, pushing the parents to making them let go is the key.
I just wanted to add a quick story. So I worked at a nature center where we lived, and I signed my children up for camp when they started kindergarten, and we lived maybe a quarter mile from where the entrance to the camp was. And, you know, I would drop them off in the morning, I'd walk them over, and then I had a job. And so I said, they can just walk themselves home. And they were like, oh, no, our policy is that they have to be signed out by a parent. And I said, but we live here. Like, it's fine. And so they said, but you have to sign something that says, like, who can sign them out? And so I just wrote on there, anyone. Anyone can sign them out of camp. And then they should walk home. I'm not coming to get them. They should walk home. And guess what? When they got home, the door was unlocked. And what did they need to do? Make themselves a snack. That's what they needed to do when they got home. I was at work on the property. I mean, if they screamed really loud, I could hear them. So I thought that was really strange. But in this culture where it's like, oh no, an adult has to sign someone out of camp every day.
Yeah, it goes back to kind of the liability.
Right.
And by the way, let's just talk about it a second. So moms, quit your jobs and be home every day from 2:30 to 3:30 to sign your kid out of camp. You know, that's not too much of an imposition. That's it. You don't mind quitting your entire job so you can be home to do something that literally anyone could do.
Right.
Well, it's also a point of privilege then, because you can afford to do that.
Right, no, it's crazy. It's like,
so which kids get to go to camp?
Right.
The ones who have a parent who can pick them up.
and the thing that Diane and I are working on is then what if you get arrested because your kid is walking home alone? You know, then what? So you have to change the laws and you have to change the norms.
I also love that even if camp kind of was tapering down next to our house, they still walk them all the way back to the dismissal place for them to then walk back home. Which is great. It just gave them more exercise, which I appreciated.
Okay, we're gonna open it up. So it's everybody's turn out here. Tammy's gonna help us with microphones so that everybody can hear you. And we've got one here in the front. Yeah, thanks.
Of course, you have to be there.
So we just had a huge scandal of parents paying $500,000 to get their kids into a particular college. And you know, someone said in the media that it was really shows that those parents really don't have faith in their kids to make it themselves in their own college. And I just wanted to have you comment on, you know, what you think of that, both that scandal and kind of the idea that parents are supposed to get their kids to the premier college instead of letting their kids figure it out and go where really they fit. So
I think right away I just want to say that for some people there is a tradition of the wealthy class that's just always been assumed they get in. That building's named after me, they get in. So I don't want to discount that it's always existed to some degree. The difference is celebrities are sort of the new royalty where they might have started out where they weren't rich and now they are. So I just want to, you know, I mean, I think there's more to it, but I think it's important to note that it's always happened, you know.
talking about kind of limiting beliefs about your children. I mean, we're really keeping our children in a very small box when we don't believe they can succeed and figure things out on their own. Children have immense capabilities, and we deny them the opportunities to display those capabilities when we limit them because of our fear or our desires for them to go to Harvard or USC or whatever it is. And we actually did a podcast not too long ago with a woman named Mary Hill. She's a college advisor, and she was talking about just how many phenomenal colleges there are. These are not Ivy League schools. These are not even the most selective schools. So it could be that one of the less selective schools actually has the best program in your child's area of interest. It may not be college. For many children, what they want to pursue does not involve college, and I think we've really kind of come to a place where you have to have a college degree, and I wish there was more conversation and liberation for our children to explore their passions. One of my children's teachers went to law school, and now he's a teacher. Well, he always wanted to be a teacher, so why didn't he just become a teacher? Well, there were societal pressures and possibly familial pressures. You know, go to law school. Well, being a teacher is an amazing and very difficult profession, and he's a phenomenal teacher. But I mean, I just think about that, like, boy, if you kind of had the freedom to pursue what you were interested up front, whether that meant college or anything else. But how are our kids ever gonna know what they're interested in doing when we don't even let them play sports without an adult getting involved? Our children are not able to figure things out on their own, because when there's a problem with a kid at school, it's someone, an adult, navigating this. They need these opportunities because they're capable of dealing with it.
So, also Mary Hill was my daughter's college counselor.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
So small world.
Yeah.
That's a small world.
She did the best podcast. We learned so much just from listening to her talk about these different kinds of schools and the notion of the match, you know, when you really find out who your child is and what school might just be the perfect place for them or one of several perfect places. And it was so refreshing. And then when this scandal hit, you know, I wanted to, in fact, we're going to repost Mary's podcast and promote it again in the aftermath of this to give people some grounding and, you know, what this whole thing is about.
And with this audience, I know this is like just throwing a softball, but you know, there's presidential candidates right now talking about free college. And like you said, college isn't the right choice for everyone. And if they took that same money and did free early childhood, that would be the difference. That's the thing that makes it I still have an ego.
And I was just going to say, and one of the things that Mary Hill talked with me about, and my youngest child was really trusting their choice and their capability to be able to make these decisions on their own, because college is a huge choice. And following your child's lead there and just being a supporting person, it's why I had to find out what the password was to sign in, because all the college prep stuff was in there, but she was a junior before I ever logged on. Don't tell her.
Okay, I think we have a question. Yeah. So I was wondering, I'm more of a free range parent, have been since day one. My boys are 14 and 15 now, but my husband doesn't go with me on this. So I was curious if you have any suggestions on getting them on board. For example, the grades, right? I don't log into the portal at all either. I refuse to look at them because I expect that they'll get good grades and they'll take care of what they need to do. But when you're micromanaging, you can't have that. So I was curious if you guys have any thoughts or ways I might be able to persuade my spouse to be more less engaged, so that we can let those children make the decisions.
Oh my God, everybody's looking.
Well,
I'm thinking about, I've been married for 50 years and I haven't succeeded in getting my husband with anything, so I'm in no position to give advice.
I'm the
Not that he's
opposite.
a bad guy, mind you, but you know, I have wanted to change a few things and I've not succeeded once.
And I'll say my ex-wife had the rubber ducky to put in the bathtub and the plastic those things. So I knew what those were. But I also did say ex-wife. So and was upset that I let our child, you know, bike by themselves, you know. So, I would listen to Marty for that.
He hasn't changed me, my husband hasn't changed me much.
But, and he does roughhouse, he roughhouses with the grandkids, though.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah,
at least he does
yeah.
something.
Well, he roughhoused with my daughter and my son many times, and I was always, even though I'm not a very fearful person, and I think I was quite encouraging of your independence.
She's a lot more anxious now, but
yeah,
that's a
I
grandma.
am an anxious grandma. But I was always standing on the sidelines. Somebody's gonna get hurt. Somebody's gonna get hurt, and somebody always did. And he's taken kids on trips without me, and they always end up going to an emergency room at least once. I won't give you the details, but one time we were shooting a home movie, and this was back in the days when they were movies, not videos. And Ron, my husband, was sitting with Aaron on one knee and our son Ryan on the other knee, and he was doing 5 little monkeys sitting in a tree, and he's doing it really aggressively, and just, jerking them up and down, and I'm quiet, off camera, and then all of a sudden, Erin gets was it an elbow in the eye or something, and she, and I'm standing back there, and now I'm not on camera, but my voice is, I told you so.
Well, and the real moral of that story is I lived.
She was not happy for a while.
That is such a tough call when, I don't know any co-parenting relationship where two parents are parenting in the same way. And so, there is going to be a little give in the different approaches, but I think someone said they're recording this, so maybe you could have them watch the video.
Just don't show the video to my husband, please.
Hello, I have a question as far as when women are in the prenatal stages and parenting, how does the panel feel about mandatory parenting classes prior to having children? Like once they're already conceived, they're in the prenatal, there's so many programs for them to choose from, but do anybody up there feel it would be good to have state regulations, county regulations? And I ask you that because I happen to have been a parent of 5 children, and I am divorced, and raised those children to, they were almost all grown when this happened, but because a couple of them were underage, the county required the father and myself to take parenting classes to learn how to be a parent. And so, and I will say that doing that, I did get some benefit out of it as well as he did. But it makes me think that there's so many single parents today that need parenting skills much more than someone who had already been a parent for 20 years. And so I'd just like to know if anybody thinks that that would be an important policy or something to bring up to like county or state officials. Thank you.
So I have a viewpoint on that, and I think it is a cultural question, and who gets to choose what is good parenting. I think that we would never agree on what that class should be like, but I do think that we should make resources available for all parents. I think there should be a variety of classes for parents who want to do attachment style parenting or whatever they want to do, and I think those should be free, and I think that they should be available everywhere, because there is no one way to be a good parent, and as soon as we make it mandatory, someone will decide on one right thing.
Yeah.
Wow. Ditto.
Too, I'm reluctant about mandatory kinds of things, but and for reasons that Sheila articulated well, in addition to others, but we do have the ECFE programs, not mandatory by any means, but I think we have a really good foundation, and we've done a pretty darn good job, I think, of really diversifying the workforce and getting community engagement to make sure that classes are culturally relevant and are for mothers and fathers both, together or separately. So I would say build on what we have and make it even more accessible and more affordable in cases where classes do cost money. Let's take that up to scale, which many of us have talked about and advocated for decades. But that would be where I would go.
And I think home visiting is important too. But again, I wouldn't want to make it mandatory. But there's some home visiting models. One coming out of Duke now, where it's more of a social worker home visitor finding out what the parent needs and then connecting to all resources, right? So what is it, if you need more of an ECFE type thing, maybe they don't know about it. It might be medical, it might be...
ECFE, I don't know.
Early childhood family education. So I have a little bit of experience as a nurse. Before I became a nurse practitioner, I worked with pregnant women who were referred to me because they tested positive for drugs in their pregnancy. But any pregnant woman in our clinic could come to see us. It's a program that started within Health Partners called Healthy Beginnings. And it was a really wonderful opportunity for many of these moms. Now, many of them were dealing with intimate partner violence. They were dealing with homelessness, really significant mental health issues. But so much of those nurse visits around their needs and where they were, meeting them where they are, and it was a unique, individualized program. And so, whether for some parents it might be, they are literate and they, have access to more information. For other parents, maybe they aren't literate. They can't, telling them to read to their kids is useless because they can't read to themselves. And so I think there's such a wide range of where people are starting, so you need a program that meets parents where they are. But we saw profound changes with these moms because a lot of our work was around empowering them to find the resources. So we would help them identify what they might need as they prepare for their baby. Of course, we're also working on getting them off of drugs. That was the number one initial issue. But so much of that was tied to their contexts and their environments. But once they started having a little bit of experience, so maybe it was between now and when you come back in 4 weeks for your OB check, why don't you look into here are some numbers. Why don't you tell me what you learn about housing options for families with children, low-income families. So they were really learning skills to start making those choices and learning how to navigate things for themselves. And I think that's a great way. And I feel like, most women, not every woman, there's plenty of women that don't get prenatal care, but many women, we have broad coverage for prenatal care. I think that's a great place to introduce some of these early messages. And I would love to see a Let It Grow program at the prenatal level, so moms could go in doing this from the beginning.
I also think it would be really great, as a person that raised 4 teenagers at the same time, that there should be more parenting classes for the parents of teenagers. In early childhood, right? Like, we can get this. Also, give a hug, right? If you can't figure it out.
Teenager a hug. That's a whole other.
But I think we need more classes for as children develop. I think ECFE is a wonderful start, and I cherish all of those moments and all of the knowledge that I gained from ECFE. But we need it as parents continuously, and with things changing in society and our mental health problems and the opioid crisis and immigration, where parents are being sent away, we need more parenting and support classes for people who aren't the biological parents of children, but grandparents, aunts and uncles. Anybody that wants to attend these classes, I think, should be available or given the opportunity to take those types of classes.
Thank you, really great. Okay, we're gonna have one last question. Really quick, Tim said really quick.
Really
quick? Oh my
Really
God,
quick.
we have to have
So
drink
much
pressure, because I emailed Lenore about our licensing regulations in preschool, and that is like such an amazing, it's so serious. It's so much the cause of what's going on right now. We have to be able to see these children all the time. Well, they're going to the bathroom around the corner. Really, I can't trust them in the bathroom, not to stick their head in the toilet. It's insane. It's totally insane. And I'm wondering if there's any way that we can, you know, kind of as a society of preschool teachers, change licensing standards. I mean, this rough and tumble play stuff, we wanted to do that in our classroom. We did it till somebody got their arm sprained and then shut it down. They just shut us down. Because they told us, licensing told us we couldn't do that. We were kind of keeping it from everybody because we didn't want anybody to know because our kids needed it. And, you know, so we just get shut down about everything. We can't climb certain play structures. We can't do this, we can't do that. We just do it under the radar because we know our kids need it. But if we got caught by licensing, I mean, my co-teacher and I would both lose our jobs because licensing standards are so heavy here, and it's really terrible. And I'd like to know if there's anybody that has any ideas about like changing it at the state level. It's not a short question, I'm sorry.
Right, no, I just want to say, are you part of this list that I started where like I keep getting complaints from all the states? And the latest one is a lady who has a tire swing hanging and she has to take it down because children could turn it into a noose. Okay, not likely. Email me and I'll at least put you in this group of people from at least 3 different states now who are all complaining about the same thing. Somebody else had to dig up their swing set because the time that a little kid was spent in a baby swing with their feet stick out, that was considered enclosed time, and it was being timed. And when they added the time that a child was in the swing to the time a child was in the caregiver's arms, it was over 20 minutes, and that meant the child was being neglected because they were constrained. It's like they're in a swing, and then they're being
I have a lot. You have all night.
These things are shocking. And Philip Howard is a writer. He wrote The Death of Common Sense. He wrote a book called The Rule of Nobody. And he says that why don't we make the licensing requirements like should be a homey atmosphere. Should resemble a nice place for kids. There should be healthy food and loving people and toys. The end.
The end. Perfect. Okay, I'm sorry because with that we have to wrap. But I'm going to welcome Barb back on to close, and I want to thank all our panelists.
Thank you, Tanya, for moderating our conversation this evening. Thanks again, Lenore, for the fantastic presentation, for being on the panel, and for all the panelists, Aaron, Marty, Mike, and Sheila. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. This has been a lot of fun. Now, if you didn't have a chance earlier, we do have copies of books from Lenore, Sheila, and Mike outside in the auditorium, so you can go check those out before you leave tonight. I hope you enjoyed this evening. Our next Small Talk event is going to be Tuesday, May 14th. You can find that on our website. What's working, how Minnesota communities are rebuilding the business of childcare is the topic of that. One more save the date on June 15th. That's our Brew for Good event. We do that with Good Company Brewing, whose motto is doing good one brew at a time. I love that. And you can come have a fun time. We're going to be at Sociable Cider Works June 15th, Saturday. All the proceeds will be going to Think Small. So if you have time to do that, please join us. One final thing, if I can get it here. For those of you that are available tomorrow, Diane Redleaf will be doing a presentation and lead a discussion on her new book at our Minneapolis office of Think Small called They Took the Kids Last Night, How the Child Protection System Puts Families at Risk. If any of you are available, that will be tomorrow morning.
Wait, say where? It's at 10 o'clock in the morning where?
It's 10 o'clock in the morning at the Think Small Minneapolis office. It's on East Kennebec. Thank you all for coming this evening. Thank you so much. Drive safely home, and we'll see you at our next event. Thank you.